What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is Alex. Today I'm going to share a little bit about my adoption story with you. So I've been adopted since I was born. I was taken away right away from my biological mother. She unfortunately was on crack cocaine at the time when she had me. And so when I got to the hospital, I tested positive for crack in my system, and basically the state took me away. They contacted close family members, eventually contacting my uncle, who is the one who ended up adopting me. As he tells it, he said that it was actually like the hospital contacted him, or the state, somebody, and he was basically like, nah, I don't want anything to do with my sister, nothing to do with no baby that she just had, like, keep me out of it, I don't blame him. If you heard the stories about how my biological mother treated him when he grew up, he sustained a lot of trauma from her, so he was like, absolutely not, I don't want any ties to her. And so, yeah, I don't blame him for feeling like that. But as told by him, he said that my biological mother ended up reaching out to him and was like, hey, can you bring me some Snickers? She had a huge craving for Snickers. And he was like, bet, I'm gonna bring you those Snickers. So he went out, he said he went to Sam's Club or Costco, got like a big box of Snickers, because he was like, you ain't finna call me back again to bring you no more stuff. And took that box to the hospital. And then my biological mother was like, hey, why don't you go, like, see the baby before she's taken away forever and you don't get the chance. And he was like, I'm good on that. But he said as he was leaving, he actually had to walk past the maternity ward, and that he ended up peeking in. Curiosity got the best of him. And that when he looked in, he recognized which one I was right away, because he said I was shaking like uncontrollably because my body was detoxing. And he said he saw me just there, shaking, and I looked scared, he said, and that the Lord spoke to him in that moment and told him, you cannot let her end up like the rest of your nieces and nephews, and you need to take her in. So he called whoever the social worker was for the hospital, let him know, I will actually take her in. They were like, bet, we'll be over to inspect your house in like 24 hours. And he was like, oh, okay. And so he said he had to like call out of work, kind of redo his whole apartment. He was going through a divorce or a separation at the time, which ended up leading to a divorce because his wife at the time didn't want kids, or like just wasn't interested in raising a kid that wasn't her own. Again, I don't blame her. It's a weird situation to be put in. So all their reconciliation efforts were out the window. And he ended up with me. And I have been with him ever since. I can honestly say that being adopted has definitely been an interesting experience, especially since I'm lucky enough to be adopted into my family, but I can honestly tell you I don't really know that side of my family still anyways. But I have always known that I'm adopted. Since as far back as I can think, I've always known. I had a social worker, as long as I can remember back in the day, like as far back as I can remember. I remember having a social worker. My dad was very honest with me about it. He eventually married the woman that I do call my mom now, which is Miss Michelle Bell. And they got married when I was like 3, so she's really the only mom I knew or know. And it's been quite a journey. I can say that, because even with being adopted within like my blood family, so still having ties to like that, like I said, I don't know really any of them. I probably know like 2 people from that side of family. I have met my biological mother. Unfortunately, she is not the best type of person still to this day. She My last encounter with her where like she talked to me was when I was like 18, and she told me like her version of things, and it was filled with a lot of lies, like a lot of things that I knew were lies just based on my own memories of my childhood. Like she said my dad stole me. It was a lot. But years of drug abuse can do that to you, and like you already kind of have to make your own reality. And so I feel like she probably does really believe it. I don't know. I haven't really interacted with her enough to know. But that's pretty much that on her. I have 2 half brothers from her and her marriage to this guy. So I have 2 older brothers. I do know them. I talk to both of them, I'd say, pretty like consistently. They're great. Love them both. One lives here in California. The other one lives up in Washington. Like I said, yeah, I love them both. They're both really cool. They've never treated me as anything other than their sister. I'm really grateful for that because they didn't have to do that. My biological father, on the other hand, it's a very unique situation in and of itself. I met him for the first time. It was a weird meeting. And that story is kind of a long story, but basically I found out that I had 3 sisters through my biological father, and I ended up meeting one of them when I was like 13, and she had made me all these promises, and I'm young, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of like in this tender spot of like, I kind of do want to explore more of like what my lineage is. I am more curious as to who these people were that contributed to creating me, and she kind of came in right at that time. And so met her, hung out with her once, and then she completely ghosted me, crushed me as a child. It was crazy. Maybe I'll go into more detail about this story because it is a wild story. But fast forward to like 2016, I get a call from this lady who's like, hey, I'm your grandma. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Connect with her. She ends up passing away, so I have to go to her funeral. And it's just me. I don't know anybody there. People are looking at me. They're like, okay, who are you? Like, you look just like us, but who are you? And I had to, like, awkwardly explain who I was, because I was the product of an affair. And it was, like I said, the full story is very convoluted. I can go into more detail if people are interested, but it's a very, very long story, and I don't have the memory or the bandwidth to kind of get deep into the weeds with my adoption story. But yeah, anyways, go to this funeral. My sister's there, the one that I had met, and she's like, oh, let's go meet Papa. And I was like, sorry. I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And she takes me over to him. She's like, oh, hey, this is the girl that claims to be your daughter. And dude looks at me and he's just like, oh, nice to meet you, young lady, but yeah, I don't know who you are. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. And I kind of just walked away. I didn't want to meet him in the first place. She kind of just dragged me over there. And it was one of those situations where, you kind of get caught and you're like somewhere very unfamiliar, and you're trying to navigate moving around like this unfamiliar space, and then a whole bunch of stuff just ends up happening. So yeah, it was so interesting. And I was like, you know what? I'm cool. I got a dad. I literally don't need anything from you. And after I left that funeral, he ends up calling my cousins who I'm with, and they end up getting into it. Basically, he's like, I want a DNA test. Woody woody woo. This kid's popping out of nowhere saying like, oh, I'm your dad. Woody woo. Mind you, I look just like my sister, the one who's kind of like instigating all of this drama. I look just like her, down to my overbite. Like, I look just like her. It's insane. I look so much like them. It's crazy. Whatever. Like I said, I didn't want anything from them. I didn't even want to meet him. I figured he was going to be there, but I wasn't looking for him. You know what I mean? And so, after that situation, I was like, I don't want nothing to do with y'all. Man, what did I say? It was like 2016. I didn't see my sister again until 2021, because one of my other sisters ended up getting killed, and I found out about it through Facebook. So I reached out to my sister, the one who was causing all the drama, and I was like, hey, sorry about your loss, because I didn't know her, but I know she's technically my half sister. But I was like, oh, I don't know her. I felt weird, but I offered my condolences, and then I ended up seeing her, and she like kind of half apologized for what happened, and it was weird, but it was like it was a weird situation. But that's pretty much as far as I've gotten with that side of my family, or like my bloodline. I don't know those people. I'm okay not knowing those people. You know, life moves on. And so I would say that in navigating like being adopted and trying to figure out my place like in my adopted family, I definitely ran into some issues. Man, I have gone through some major identity crisis just because I would get people who tell me like, oh, you don't look like your family. I had an aunt tell me I was like, nobody would believe me about a situation because I wasn't blood. Who would bully me a lot around my being adopted when I was younger. And so just little stuff, you know, and like it definitely made for just, I don't know, like I went through a period where I felt really lost, and the one main person who always made me feel like I belonged in my family was my grandma, who passed away. And she was kind of like my go-to person. And when she passed away, I was in high school, and it was a very, very terrible time because that was kind of the height of my identity crisis. I was arguing with my parents. I was like, yo, like, I don't vibe with y'all. Y'all treat me very differently than my siblings, because, you know, I have a brother and a sister through my adoption, and I was like, you don't treat me like you treat your blood kids. It was a lot. It was definitely a lot, especially in high school. I was very vulnerable. I had some people who were supposed to be trustworthy really violate me, and I was just angry. I was so angry, and I ended up taking most of my anger out on my parents. Did not trust my mom. I was like, I don't trust you. You don't love me like you love your two actual children. You treat me like garbage. Woo-doo-doo-woo. We would get into it like all the time. I was talking back, going crazy. With my dad, I was doing all types of stuff, talking back. I'd take his stuff. It was crazy. And like once I graduated and I was determined to move out, I was like, I do not want to see y'all. I ended up moving out because I got into this relationship, moved in with my partner at the time, and that was actually, no, I jumped ahead. I actually moved out before that because I started working in Orange County. I found some roommates and I moved in with them. That is what started like a very terrible drinking problem for me. I just went into a full spiral, became a full-blown alcoholic. I was partying, I was doing all this stuff, because I wasn't raised like that. I was raised very sheltered. My dad's pastor, so I'm PK, which is a different type of trauma. But I was like, I'm wild out. I got out there, wild out, ended up having to come back. Then I got into this really terrible relationship and was acting crazy. Ended up leaving on terrible terms, and at the time my younger sister was in high school, and I remember it was so bad. We did not talk to each other. It was bad. I didn't talk to anybody I was like, they're not my family. They don't love me. You know, it's like, they don't love me. They don't care about who I am, who I'm trying to be, where I'm trying to go. Like, they don't support me. It was a lot. It was a lot, y'all. Like, if I told you some of the stories from, like, high school to, like, probably 2018. So, think, like, a whole 8-year span. Yeah. 10-year span, because I'd say it started like in 2008. Man, it was crazy. I'm really blessed to like be able to have the opportunity to come back home, because we've done a lot to mend our relationship over the last few years, and so that's why, if you watch my last video, I talked about how I ended up having to come back home after living up north. How grateful I was for the opportunity, because if you look at the relationship I have with my family up until like 2018, I would have never thought that I'd be able to come back. But one, it's under different circumstances, and two, like I'm a way better person. I had to do a lot of healing. I went to therapy, which helped and also didn't help. I don't know. I had a weird experience with therapy. But I'm a way better person than I was. And even this year, yeah. We're barely into this year. My mom and I probably had like one of the deepest conversations we've had ever. Laid out a lot of stuff. It was really healing. It's all so healing, like, to be able to have these conversations now and to look back and be like, man, not only was I tripping, but like, I'll say, like, I was tripping, and even though my emotions were valid, the way I handled situations and the way I did stuff, the way I moved, was really, really, really shiesty. And so now that I have like the tools to kind of cope better with my emotions, and I'm still learning to deal with my emotions and my anger. Anger is something I still very much to this day deal with, but now my anger's more, it's not geared towards my parents like it was. Now it's more geared at, I'd say, like, situations. And so I don't know. I'm learning, I'm growing. I'm learning to embrace the fact that I'm adopted, because that's something I honestly never did embrace. I never really share my story around that, or around my emotions around that. My dad will tell the adoption story, like, from the pulpit a lot, but I don't ever get to share my process with it and the things that have happened to me. And so, yeah. If you guys are interested in hearing more details about anything that I brought up, I know it's kind of all over the place. I'll be happy to like do a deep dive into some situations. Actually, any situation, because honestly, I've done the healing from a lot of these things, so none of these stories trigger me anymore, which is good. But I appreciate your time. Appreciate you checking me out. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.